Welcome to Kermode Uncut. A couple of weeks ago, I did a blog about the fact that it had been half term and I'd missed a bunch of movies from press screenings, so I'd gone to see them in the cinema. And I was suggesting that I'd enjoyed some of them, specifically A Bad Mom's Christmas, more because I'd seen them with a paying audience who were really enjoying the films. I was asking about whether or not the audience makes a difference to your experience of films. I know we've talked a lot here on the blog about how, people rustling sweet papers and going on their phones can spoil a film, but can it also make a film? Well, according to you, it really can. Here are just some of your responses. This from Quietly Myself. Mars Attacks. Absolutely hilarious when I saw it opening weekend in a packed cinema. And every time I've seen it since, it's been completely unfunny. Actually, weirdly enough, with Mars Attacks, I had a different experience. The first time I saw it in the cinema when it didn't go down very well. I was pretty much the only person laughing. Now, everyone I know thinks it's funny. I mean, what's not to love? This from Chatsubo657. As rubbish as Rocky IV was, watching it with a big Saturday night crowd turned it into a real pantomime in a good way. Cheer for Rocky, boo at Drago, hum at the tune at the end. And that's echoed by Phil, who said Rocky IV at the ABC in Gloucester. In the closing rounds of the final fight, the entire cinema was stamping their feet and shouting, Rocky, Rocky, Rocky. The floor was shaking and I was swept away. The only time a breaking of the code of conduct I found acceptable. Nick Savides says this about Geostorm. Now, I reviewed Geostorm and said, look, it's terrible, but I have to admit, I kind of enjoyed how terrible it was. Nick Savides goes one step further, says, I saw Geostorm in a near-packed 4DX screening. Now, Geostorm is not a good film. No, Geostorm is not a good film. However, the shaky chairs which whirled and rocked, the smoke and water effects, etc. that goes along with the 4DX experience made the film far more enjoyable than it would have been otherwise. The crowd were cheering and laughing, getting far more involved with the film than if it had been a normal, regular screening. Now, I've stayed away from the whole 4DX thing. I think if you actually have to turn something into a fairground ride, then the film isn't working. But it does sound like, as far as Geostorm's concerned, it's a film that was made for 4DX. This from Bruges is in Belgium. Went to see The Visit by M. Night Shyamalan. Now, you remember I had a sort of long debate here about whether or not I had misread The Visit, because I didn't like it, but a lot of other people did. Along with the audience, we had the best time. We laughed at all the jokes, we jumped at all the scares, we had a great time. I then watched the film at home last year to recapture the feeling when it was initially seen. However, it was that viewing that I realised that the film is actually quite bad. I definitely think the audience contributes to the experience. So in that case, enjoyed it in the cinema with a packed crowd. As soon as you see it at home, you go, it's actually not that good at all, is it? And that's exactly what I was trying to flag up on the blog, that you can see it with an audience which is going with it, and that really affects your reaction to the film. This from Arch Stanton. Watching Tommy Wiseau delivering such gems as, oh man, I just can't figure women out. Sometimes they're just too smart, sometimes they're just flat out stupid, other times they're just evil, while sat 2 seats across from Peter Bradshaw at a 9 AM screening just won't do. The room regulars of Leicester Square's Prince Charles Cinema must surely be the crowd to elevate and enjoy all Wiseisms with. Now, you'll know that The Disaster Artist is coming to UK cinemas very soon. In fact, the brothers Franco are coming on the show I do with Simon Mayo to talk about The Disaster Artist, which means that we're going to get Simon Mayo to watch The Room. What a treat that's going to be for him. Just a few more here from Techmerian. My experience with Festen, The Celebration. The first time I watched it was at home, alone. I found it to be a really good film, though extremely dark and tough due to its subject matter. I completely agree. I found it very dark and very tough. A few years later, I watched it again. This time I watched it in Denmark, in a theatre full of Danish people. And this time, knowing the basics of the language. Turns out that despite the darkness and the seriousness of the film, for a Danish-speaking audience, the film is also laugh-out-loud funny all the way through. At first, I was extremely surprised, but then I just sat back, relaxed, and went along with the laughs, and what a revelation it was. I have to say, I take some convincing that Festen is really funny all the way through, but thank you for that European perspective. Just a couple of last ones. This from Cedric Melvin. I remember going to see Harold and Kumar escape from Guantanamo Bay in a packed-out cinema, laughing all the way through. I haven't seen it since, but can only imagine it's probably awful. Laughter is definitely infectious when you watch films with an audience. And just as a bit of an antidote to all this, a final comment from Charlie Lambert. Perhaps I'm just a misanthrope, but I fail to see how being surrounded by people talking, coughing, fiddling with their phones and rusting huge buckets of popcorn while making gormless comments can be anything but detrimental to any film-going experience. Well, Charlie, I used to agree with you, but on the strength of these comments, it's not always the case that empty is best.